A single angry tweet from Donald Trump can quickly cost a company billions of dollars in stock market value, as Boeing, General Motors, and Lockheed Martin have quickly learned, just to name a few. His fingers are some of the most powerful in the world, and when he issues an early morning or late night tweet aimed at a specific company, the shares of the targeted company drop. Joining me now from Washington to explain more about this and how this is a crisis communications expert, Richard Levick. Richard, thanks so much for being here. You are a crisis communications expert. What advice would you give to companies that find themselves being targeted by a Trump tweet?
The first thing right now is in the early days of the administration, the president-elect is genuflect. That is, your first and primary goal is to preserve share value, protect the stockholders. And that's why you see so many companies genuflecting early, that is, coming to the president on bended knee, giving him the easy victory lap. Later in time is when you stand your ground. But for right now, give him the victory lap.
So how do you control this? I mean, if the president-elect sends out a negative tweet at 2 in the morning, this is going to blindside investors, and it's going to the board itself. How do you control it? How do you protect against this?
Well, you don't control it, but the best you can do is use your peacetime wisely. What we're seeing is, and this is remarkable, but the president-elect has the ability to impact stock with a single use of 2 thumbs. He really has extraordinary powers, and companies have to anticipate that now, obviously publicly traded companies. So in using your peacetime, think about, first of all, get your facts together and reduce them down to 140 characters. Identify who your allies are. If you look at GM, if you look at Chrysler, if you look at GM and you look at Carrier, what you see there is that the union leaders had significant roles in being communicators, the legitimacy of talking about jobs. So if you do those kinds of things, if you identify pictures and video that give you the emotive support of what you're trying to articulate, you'll find that you're in better position to respond more quickly.
Well, I think all of that makes sense, but then sometimes a lot of these companies would argue that perhaps the president himself, president-elect rather, himself doesn't have the facts straight. I mean, if I look at one of the tweets, the early ones, Boeing is building a brand new 747 Air Force One for future presidents, but costs are out of control, more than $4 billion. Cancel order. Now, by many accounts, it wasn't going to be $4 billion. So how can Boeing be ready for this if the president-elect says that the cost is greater than it actually was?
Ben, you used a word I'm not familiar with. I think the word was facts. We now exist in this post-truth and highly disruptive area, and companies have to anticipate that, in fact, that they're going to be dealing with a president who does not seem to be very concerned about the facts. That's why I said a moment ago, look for those things that emotionally support your position, the pictures, the video, the third parties, the allies who can articulate. When a union spokesperson talks about jobs, we believe it because they're more capable of emoting that issue. So emotion here is going to be really critical, but you have to do it now. You only are going to have moments to be able to communicate in the digital world. Think about that now. Don't wait until after you're the target.
This all sounds great as defensive tactics, but can a company ever go on the offense against the White House if a tweet thoroughly damages a company's stock or its reputation? Can they take legal recourse against the Oval Office, or are they protected?
Well, there's sovereign immunity. I think the legal issues are somewhat limited, but we are entering uncharted territory here. I do think that what companies want to be thinking about in using their peacetime and how do they build their allies is there's going to be a company. You'll notice that most of the companies that gets attacked are largely B2B, not entirely with the auto industry, but a lot of the defense companies. That is business to business. We're going to see some of the business to consumer companies, probably the technology companies, are going to do the calculus just like the president-elect, and they're going to realize at some point in the near future, it's better to go on the attack. Our customers will begin to become supportive of our position on the internet, and that will be extremely helpful. And other companies need to watch that, because when a business-to-consumer company starts to go back at the president, starts to stand up for their position, then it's no longer going to be smart to kowtow to genuflect.
Richard Levick, Chairman and CEO of Levick Communications, thank you so much for being here.